It appears Keke Palmer didn't show solidarity with her black brother, as apparently she canceled her Jonathan Majors podcast interview, or I should say she replaced it with some female thought rapper called Cash Doll. Because as you know, if rappers aren't promoting murder, usually they have the females promoting explicit whorish behavior. You know, it's like every female rapper nowadays is an extreme version of Lil' Kim or Foxy Brown. But anyway, in terms of Keke Palmer replacing the Jonathan Majors interview, it's another example in the long list of examples of this woke hierarchy that I talk about. Because as you know, in Hollywood, they love to promote the racial idolatry, particularly of minorities. And so you would assume Jonathan Majors would get a pass. But you also have to acknowledge on that woke hierarchy, you do have feminist agenda females that are above all men, you know, and not just white men, all presumably heterosexual men, because you have to say that, you know, dealing with Hollywood, because we know they all get turned out, or else you don't get a career. And Jonathan Majors, there's plenty of photos where he was willing to play gay games. You know, very intimate photos with Jonathan Majors and Michael B. Jordan as an example. But yeah, he's getting his wake up call repeatedly. He thought he could, you know, marry Megan Good, and that would, you know, re-solidify his fan base with the Sistahood, black women. But they do not forget the fact that Jonathan Majors was with that white woman, and they know because they analyze the photos and videos when he's with Megan Good. They know that his preference still lies with the Snow Bunnies. And yes, you know, the queens, the self-proclaimed queens and sisterhood, the black women's, they get to divest. You know, they get to be with their white partners, as they like to say, because, you know, if they're not heterosexual, they're lesbian, they're still going to be with someone white, or white female. But anyway, they get to play the interracial game, but the black men's aren't allowed to play that game. And I think that's a lot to do with why he's still getting backlash. Now, Keke Palmer also got some backlash because she had the audacity to have him on her platform. And, you know, Keke Palmer, she's a child actress, and not too long ago, she made the news for, you know, pretty much cheating on her, not husband, because, you know, these hoes ain't married, cheating on her baby daddy when she went to an Usher concert. You know, as these females do who are in relationships, they think that they are allowed to be publicly, intimately engaged with another man because, you know, they're women. You know, and they can do it, and men can't. And, you know, and at that time, the sisterhood was still on her side, but obviously now it gets brought back up, the shady things that she's done, because she had Jonathan Majors on her platform. Now, ultimately, I don't think her career is going to be put in timeout the way Jonathan Majors has. But it's just another example that if you ever, you know, divert yourself from the woke hierarchy and liberal ideology, that they will pounce on you every single time. You know, and again, this to me is just another example of woke on woke crime. And it's also another example of why that whole black community, black unity bullshit is just that bullshit. Because when they're not engaging in the racial idolatry, you know, which is usually only used to defend, low-life criminal scumbags. But when they're not engaging in that, there's this 24/7 battle, gender war between so-called black females and black men. And this is another example of that playing out. And what's funny enough is, again, in the past, she has defended someone like Chris Brown, who I must say is, really a unicorn, because he had photo evidence of him beating the hell out of Rihanna, who was even famous back then, and he's pretty much gotten away with that scot free. And a lot of that is because a lot of his female fans, particularly black female fans, defended him for beating Rihanna. Which again just goes to show you that you can even get away with beating chicks if, you're able to somehow seduce a certain female segment of the population. But anyway, just another example of woke on woke crime as far as I'm concerned. And don't feel sorry for any of the parties involved. But it's just, again, another prime example of why Hollywood truly isn't an industry that anybody that has any level of dignity and integrity is really an industry that's not for people like that. Because a lot of people get called sellouts, but the reality is, if you're willingly trying to enter Hollywood, the mainstream media industry, then you're a sellout. There's no building up to being a sellout. Just attempting to be a part of that is a sellout within itself, because again, we know it comes with certain sacrifices, particularly for men. Male and females, but in this instance, I'm focused on the men. And, as we know, one of them is to emasculate yourself. Emasculate yourself to the feminist and LGBTQ agenda. Like, that's up front. You're expected to do. And then, of course, if you're a non-black person, particularly a white guy, you have to be overtly racially cucked in order to be involved in that industry. But anyway, apparently they finally did release his bodybuilder movie called Magazine Dreams. But again, no one noticed because it pretty much got buried, even though it was released. So, I don't know. I guess his next move is to buddy up to Tyler Perry and be a part of his crap movies. Because it's not looking good for the man so far. But again, that's what he gets. Kissing women's behinds. And is now women, primarily are the main ones that won't even tolerate him having an interview on a certain platform.